Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me for today's podcast, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here to talk about Puff Johnson in this edition of the UNC Basketball ISO Series. But before we do that, I'm going to plug the website real quick, TarHeelIllustrated.com. Make sure you head on over there after the video is done. Link in the description below. Sign up to be a premium member. Premium access to our message boards for just $8.33 a month. Now that the recruiting dead period is over, there is a ton of recruiting content in particular you can only find on there. And we go where the Tar Heels go during the season. So if you want some kind of recruiting tidbits, some other things that are going on behind the scenes, and also just hear from me, Dina, AJ, David, and other members of our staff, you got to be signed up for those premium boards. So go ahead after this video is done, of course, and sign up for just $8.33 a month. But AJ, let's dive into Puff Johnson in this one. It's funny, we kind of debated. No, I'm going to go ahead and say this on camera. We kind of debated whether we do one or not because of how limited and how many limited minutes we saw Puff play last year. Obviously injured his toe and his right foot back in January and didn't see him for the remainder of the season. Played 14 games, averaged 1.1 points, 0.5 rebounds, 0.1 assists, shot 42.9% from the floor. Not a huge sample size on the guy. Obviously, the younger brother of Cam Johnson. We know how good Cam is playing for the Suns right now and how much he developed when he transferred to Carolina. I know we've talked about people saying that he's better than Cam coming out of high school, which I think is saying a lot based on what we've seen from Cam's development and whatnot. But just overall, looking back to last season, 14 games, just didn't get a ton of sampling in those games, didn't play a lot. So kind of to be determined on what type of player Puff is going to end up being and what we think he can end up being.
I think the game he played the most in was 9 minutes in the home win over Notre Dame, which was a really, really big win for the Tar Heels. Not enough sample size, but I did see him. The game that actually stands out to me when I think about Puff was the Iowa game. Iowa was one of the few places I went this past season where we were actually fairly close to the court and the media. Most places, they stuck us way up at the top. Even in buildings like in Cleveland, there were no fans at all. There were like 100 people in the building, including the team's game personnel, and they stuck us way up top. Iowa, we were a little bit more, I think maybe 20 rows up, so I got a different angle. And it actually stood out to me that game, the way Puff moved. He had a layup on the break, maybe after a turnover or something, but he filled the lane really well. And I liked the way he moved in that game. And I think I remember talking to you afterward, after we did our Three Things video, or beforehand, about, I saw something from Puff that night that made me think that, okay, there's going to be some growth here. Well, we didn't really see the growth, partly because Kerwin Walton, a week later, 2 weeks later, hit those threes against Kentucky and Cleveland, and then suddenly he started emerging in a role that I think that Puff may have gotten an opportunity to take some more time in that role until Kerwin hit those threes, and they desperately needed someone that could shoot. So Kerwin got that job, and then Puff got hurt with the big toe. 1 for 9 from three. He's supposed to be a shooter. I think that there was a comfort issue at times. He didn't always look comfortable and confident out there. But I think the reason it's important that we do this is because we did get to see a little bit of him play.
Yeah.
And there were some things I liked about his athletic ability. He kind of glides a little bit. He's long arms. He's a smart guy. He's going to be a smart player. I think he's going to be one of those guys that anticipates well defensively and will end up being someone who could do a lot of nice things for you on the court. I don't have any idea what the high end for him was, but we can talk about where he was at this point in his career as opposed to where Cam was. Cam had a similar freshman year at Pitt where he played several games and got hurt and then redshirted the rest of the year. Cam actually was at Pitt for 3 basketball seasons before transferring to Carolina. He played in 2 full seasons, so he still had 2 years of eligibility left. I think Puff was ahead of Cam even this year than where Cam was his true freshman year. But in high school, I've talked to people who know the Johnsons extremely well. And I would think that they know the situation as well as anybody. And I was told Puff's way ahead of Cam. Like, not light years, but way ahead of Cam. Cam's offers coming out of high school were Iona and Pitt. And Pitt was a legacy offer because his father, their father, Gil, played at Pitt. And they're from the Pittsburgh area. So it was just Iona. Puff had a lot of offers. Puff could have gone a lot of places. He was a top 50 player. I think he finished 48th maybe in the Rivals final rankings in 2020. There's a reason he was rated that high. You go look at his production in high school up in the Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area, very, very good player. Then he spends a year in Arizona, the Phoenix area, playing probably the most loaded high school team in the country. You saw him play in the Holiday Festival where he was sort of another part of those guys. He learned how to play with big-time players. So, we kind of like with Anthony Harris, the jury's still out big time because Anthony didn't have 2 off seasons to fully put in the time to develop his skills. We didn't really get to see Puff go through a full season. We didn't get to see maybe a couple of games where Roy just threw him out there for 14 or 15 minutes to see what he could do and how he would respond. He's a good athlete. He's long. He was regarded by everybody way ahead of where Cam was. He's a smart guy like Cam. I've been told that he's just as hard a worker as Cam, and Cam, with his success, will actually help Puff along. So, Sean, look, it's not about where you are at the moment. Don't get dejected about where you are at this moment. It's about where you are in 10 or 15 or 20 moments ahead. That's the way Cam approached things, and it's working out very well for him. So Puff is at a place where he knows he can get better. He understands the process. He knows that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And because he has some natural skills that I think we have a chance at seeing some this year that this program might need, we might see a little bit more. We probably will see a little bit more Puff Johnson in 21-22 than we did in 2021.
Yeah, and you mentioned the story that I saw Cam. I always like to tell this story because I think it's a funny story in the first place, just because of how it went down. But I was sitting courtside shooting Cam at a John Wall Invitational. I saw him play one game.
Puff.
Puff, excuse me. Sorry, I got Cam in my head over here. I was watching Cam yesterday, or a couple of days ago. A couple of weeks ago now it would be.
I enjoy watching. I'm not a big NBA guy, but I enjoy watching Cam and Kobe.
He's good, man. I've been watching him, a couple of weeks ago playing against the Lakers and whatnot. And he's really, really solid NBA player. Glad he's worked out there. But I remember watching Puff at the John Wall, and I watched one game. I think it was the bracket championship game. And you mentioned it, but that team that he was on was just loaded. It's had guys everywhere. And Puff started on the team. Played a lot, but I think he I remember, didn't get the ball a lot. He had a couple shots. I remember he had 1 3 that he just airballed, missed a couple easy kind of layups. And just, I think he probably finished 7 points. Just, didn't get a lot of touches in the first place, but just didn't see a lot from Puff that game. And I remember looking around just being like, Carolina's really off after this guy. And, fast forward to the end of the game, and they're doing kind of the trophy presentation. And they do the bracket MVP, and Puff Johnson's name pops up and he gets the bracket MVP for the tournament. I was like, all right, I guess it was just a bad game for him because I just didn't see it in that game. And then I went and interviewed him after the game. And I mean, one of the nicest kids I've ever interviewed. It was a great interview for a kid as young as he was, and super well-spoken, just a really, really fun interview to have, and just a really, really nice kid all around, on and off the camera. So yeah, I always like to tell that story because it was just the funniest thing in the world to me that I was looking around like, I really don't know how Carolina's off this guy, how this guy's so highly recruited. And then he gets the bracket MVP, and I'm like, all right, I just missed it. I needed the whole sample size to really.
I've seen Parade All-Americans.
Yeah.
Back when Parade All-America was the thing, I've seen top 10 kids score 4, 5, 6 points in a high school game. It happens.
Yeah,
it happens. They're still growing and developing. But I think what's important about Puff is that there are skills there. I think last year was just a matter of maybe there was some confidence issues, and there was a lack of comfort, and there was an adjustment that needed to be made. And what sucks for him about getting hurt in early January is that he lost all that time to continue to gain comfort. Now, sometimes it's good for a guy to step back and watch. I know, in sometimes a quarterback back, remember he wanted to get Jay Schroeder some reps and get Sam an opportunity 2 years ago. Sam an opportunity to kind of take a look at a series every once in a while. And certainly with young players, you do that. Sometimes they learn just as much watching up close as they do getting out there and playing. So Puff at least had that. But we'll see by Christmas. I know I use Christmas as sort of a timeline for a lot of stuff with college basketball because you get plenty of time. You get a chance to play some of the patsies, you get a chance to play some really good opponents, which Carolina will this coming season, and we'll kind of get a read on where that player is at that point in time. I think Puff, if he's patient, could be a nice player for this program at some point. I don't know what he's going to be next year. I don't know what their needs are just yet. I do know this, though, Jacob, and I've told you this for the last few years. When you look at a team before the season, whether it's football or basketball, it never ends up looking quite the way you think. There's always some things that change. A lot of people thought, Kerwin will never get on the court because all he can do is shoot. He was a number 91 player in the class or whatever. Doesn't work out that way People thought that Garrison Brooks, he was preseason ACC Player of the Year, didn't even make honorable mention. So we have no idea, obviously. But I do think that with Puff, the odds are it's going to be a process over the next few years. And the guy that we're talking about 2 years from now, 3 years from now, assuming he's still at Carolina, he could be one of their better players by then. I think that there's a lot of game in there, but we won't really know exactly how much until he reaches a comfort level. And we have a chance of seeing that this coming year. He's certainly a part that they could use. You could always use the 6'7", 6'8", long arm wings that can knock down a jump shot. Obviously, when you look at the way Hubert's recruiting, he wants a lot of guys like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I would imagine if Puff was a high school senior right now or a high school junior and was in the class of 22, Hubert would be recruiting.
Oh, definitely. And let me just add this too about Puff. And we talked about him. We did a ton of podcasts before last season, kind of going into it. You and David did some podcasts, and I don't think any of us really, at least I don't remember any of us really talking about, okay, yeah, Puff's going to come in, be just this guy who puts up 10 points a game, just hits threes all the time, and just finish product. And I think I remember our conversation, and you and David's, from what I remember listening to it, is, he wasn't a guy that was really, and obviously barring the injury, kind of messed all that up regardless. But he really wasn't a guy that many of us expected, and people that really followed him in high school, to come in and just be this elite level freshman, like maybe that Caleb Love had as an expectation, or Day'Ron Sharp as an expectation. Sure, he was highly rated, but I don't think it was necessarily a surprise that, 14 games, 1 point, didn't play a lot. I don't think that was really a surprise. I think he's more of a developmental guy, like you mentioned, exactly like Cam was.
Well, I think the message here is that every athlete has their own timetable.
Exactly.
And I don't like when fans determine what they think the timetable should be for kids. It just takes a while. Everyone's different. We all are like that. Regular life finds itself onto the playing fields and the playing courts and football and basketball, the sports that we cover here at THI, all the time. That's real life. It's a sport. It may not determine whether or not the sun's going to come up the next day, but real life finds itself into these teams, into these athletes, and everyone's got a different timetable. I got married later in life. That was my timetable. I was an immature dude for a long time. I wasn't ready for the nuptials, okay? So that was my timetable. And my wife will tell you I'm still an immature guy. And maybe I'm still not ready. Who knows? Anyway, we all have different timetables for absolutely everything in life. Puff got his timetable. We'll eventually find out what kind of player he's going to be. And it could be this year, because there's definitely a need for guys who can put the ball in the basket. And other than 1 for 9 in 14 games, that's not enough of a sample size. Everything I know about him, I've heard about him, and what I've seen watching him shoot around before the injury, he's got a nice stroke. He should be able to help this program at some point, putting the ball in the basket from a long distance.
Yeah, and even if he can be, 75% of the player that Cam was, he's going to be a good player for North Carolina, because Cam was
damn good as a senior.
Yeah, that was my first year covering Carolina full time, for full season, and man, great kid off the court as well, but just he was good, and we've seen him continue to develop in the NBA. And if it's true that which I'm sure for what we've heard, it has to be from who we've heard it for, that Puff's a lot, not light years, but a way ahead of Cam coming out of high school. He's got the potential to be a really, really good player if he can, get back healthy, stay healthy, and continue to work and develop his game. So, yeah, I think the future is bright for Puff. May not be this year where we see him reach his peak. I don't think any of us think it would be. I think he's a guy like Cam who will probably continue to develop the years he goes by at Carolina, if he stays at Carolina for all 4 years. But, yeah, I think Puff's has the potential at least to really be a big-time player for the Tar Heels down the road. So, we'll see how it goes next season. We'll see the developments and that he makes in the offseason and gets healthy and finally gets back to playing basketball, because I think, like I said, he's got a lot of potential to be a really good player for Carolina. But I think it's a good place to wrap this one up. AJ, this is Puff Johnson edition of our UNC Basketball ISO Series. Make sure you go check out the other videos we've rolled out on the guys that are returning from last year's team. And as always, guys, head on over to our website, Tar Illustrated, and sign up to be a premium member for just $8.33 a month. You guys know what to do. Like, share, and of course, subscribe to our channel. See you guys in the next one. Thanks.